It was a freezing winter morning when the bitter wind sliced through the cracks of the small diner on the edge of town. The streets were still wet from the night's rain, and a pale sun struggled to break through the thick clouds. Inside the diner, the air smelled of old coffee, burnt toast, and the faint sweetness of maple syrup. Behind the counter, a young waitress named Lena wiped her tired eyes and forced a smile. Her shift had started at 6 a.m., and she hadn't had a real break in hours. She'd been working double shifts lately, barely making enough to cover rent and the hospital bills for her sick mother. Her hands trembled slightly as she poured another cup of coffee for a grumpy truck driver, but she didn't complain. She couldn't afford to. Before we go further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of compassion, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindfire Moments. Your small gesture helps us spread stories that remind the world that goodness still exists. Sparkling Heart. The diner's bell rang as the door opened, letting in a gust of cold air. Lena looked up and saw a man in an expensive suit holding a little girl in a wheelchair. The girl's small frame was wrapped in a pink coat, her face pale but sweet, her eyes bright with curiosity. They looked out of place, like they had wandered into the wrong world. The man's clothes screamed wealth, yet his expression carried a heaviness that words couldn't describe. He led the wheelchair to a corner booth and quietly helped the girl settle in. Lena noticed how tenderly he tucked a blanket over her legs, how he whispered something that made her smile faintly. When Lena approached to take their order, the man was distracted, scrolling through emails on his phone, his brow furrowed. The little girl, however, looked up at Lena with a shy smile and whispered, "I'm really hungry, but my daddy forgot my food." Her voice was soft, trembling slightly, as if afraid of getting in trouble. Lena's heart broke at the sight. Without hesitation, she bent down, smiled warmly, and said, "Don't worry, sweetheart. I'll take care of that." She went back to the kitchen and quietly prepared a plate of pancakes with strawberries and whipped cream, something that wasn't on the free list. She paid for it herself, using the few dollars she had saved from tips. As the girl began to eat, her little hands shaky but determined, the father finally looked up and noticed what was happening. There was a flicker of surprise in his eyes, maybe even guilt. He hadn't realized how hungry his daughter was, he'd been too consumed by business calls and the weight of his own world. He opened his mouth as if to protest, but stopped when he saw the kindness in Lena's face. She wasn't expecting a tip or attention. She was just doing what her heart told her to do. Hours later, after finishing their meal, the man asked for the check. When Lena brought it, she smiled awkwardly, saying she had already covered the little girl's meal. The man looked confused, almost offended. "You didn't have to," he said softly, but Lena just shook her head and replied, "She reminded me of someone I love. It's okay." She didn't elaborate that her own younger sister, Emma, had once been in a wheelchair before she passed away 2 years ago. Helping that girl felt like helping her sister again, just for a moment. The man paid silently, left a modest tip, and wheeled his daughter out. Lena thought that was the end of it. She wiped the table, sighed deeply, and continued with her day, unaware that her life was about to change in ways she could never imagine. 2 days later, a black car pulled up in front of the diner. Lena was on her break, sipping lukewarm coffee in the corner. A man in a black coat stepped in and asked, "Is there a waitress named Lena here?" Her heart skipped. Had she done something wrong? The man handed her a crisp white envelope and said only, "Mr. Williams asked me to give you this." Before she could respond, he was gone. Inside the envelope was a letter written in elegant handwriting, along with a check. Lena's eyes widened as she read. The letter began. "Dear Lena, I don't know if you remember me, but I'm the man whose daughter you fed the other morning. Her name is Hope. She was born with a rare condition, and since her mother passed away, I've been struggling to balance work and care. That day, I was drowning in business and grief. You reminded me what kindness looks like, something I've long forgotten in my world of numbers and power. You didn't know who we were, and yet you gave without expecting anything. I want to return that kindness." Lena's hands shook as she looked at the check. It was written for $50,000. Her breath caught in her throat. Her knees almost gave out. She reread it, thinking it must be a mistake. But at the bottom of the letter, a phone number was written. She hesitated for hours before finally calling it. The man's deep, calm voice answered, "Lena, I've been waiting for your call." Over the following weeks, everything changed. Mr. Williams, one of the most successful business magnates in the city, offered Lena a position as a personal assistant in his charity foundation. He told her he needed people who understood compassion, not just business. At first, she resisted. She was just a waitress, what could she possibly offer? But he insisted, saying, "You see people for who they are, not what they're worth. That's rare." Lena accepted, and slowly, her world transformed. She learned to navigate boardrooms instead of diner counters. She worked hard, studied at night, and poured her heart into every project, from organizing food drives to helping children like Hope get access to medical care. Mr. Williams became not just her boss but a mentor, a father figure who believed in her when no one else did. And Hope, sweet, smiling Hope, became like a younger sister. Every time Lena saw her smile, she felt a piece of her old pain heal. Months later, during a charity gala, Mr. Williams shared Lena's story publicly. He told the audience how a simple act of kindness from a small-town waitress reminded him that humanity isn't measured in wealth but in warmth. The crowd gave Lena a standing ovation, tears glistening in many eyes. She stood there trembling, trying to hold back her own tears. For the first time, she felt seen, not as a struggling waitress, but as someone who made a difference. Years passed, and Lena went on to run the foundation herself. She built shelters, funded hospitals, and gave scholarships in memory of her sister and Hope's late mother. And though life had once seemed cruel and unfair, she had learned something powerful, that every small act of kindness sends ripples through the world, touching lives we may never know. Sometimes, she still returned to that old diner. She'd sit by the window with a cup of coffee and smile at the waitress rushing from table to table. And whenever she saw someone struggling, she'd leave a generous tip with a small note that read, "You never know whose life you're changing, keep being kind." If this story touched your heart, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindfire Moments. Your support helps us keep sharing real, emotional stories that remind the world that compassion still matters. Revolving Hearts. Sparkle special request, comment below what kindness means to you. We'd love to hear your thoughts and maybe feature your comment in our next story.